Good day to you.
Good day to you.
We wish for you to be fully grounded into your body as you not only receive this transmission, but as you not only hear our words, but partake in the frequency of what we are sharing or what we are about to share. It's really about receiving through your body, to get it, to understand it. Because the understanding you're seeking is not an understanding in your mind. It's an understanding from the physical, so that the physical can feel anchored into your reality more than it has been. One of the reasons why it has not been as anchored and as secure or safe or comfy as you usually are familiar with is because of the transformation that you are going through, all of you. This transformation, to simplify things, we'll begin to say, it's really about you. We'll give you a couple of different examples. You can see it as you are moving from understanding life from your mind, understanding and creating from your mind. And when we say mind, we sort of mean the lower mind, not the higher mind, the 3D mind. You're moving from living your reality and creating your reality from the mind and moving into creating your reality from the heart. And this is something we have talked about before. We have had conversations about this. But you are so deep in the middle of this transformation of what you call an ebb to this flow, of what you may call the void, or what you may call the slow process, the slow transition. It can't be an overnight process. You would not be able to sustain this. All bodies of you would not be able to sustain this. So the transition has to be gradual. It has to go through all the bodies. So your mind is still wanting to operate from old paradigm. And we'll say it in a different way. Your mind is looking for the familiarity of the way things used to be. And you're not going back in that direction. Where you are heading, you are going to be doing, processing, creating, being very different and from a very different place. From a heart space place, from an embodied place. The more you ground into your body and into your present moment and into your physicality, the more powerful you are, the more power you have access to. And you know this. But what the mind is seeking to fix, to understand, to create a solution for something because it believes that there is a problem. And this could be on the topic of your daughter. This could be on the topic of your career. This is literally on all topics in your reality right now. The fact that you do not have clarity, the fact that there is more confusion than clarity, the fact that things don't feel anchored as they used to, or sure, or certain, or clear. It's meant to be this way because it's not up for the mind to understand anymore. If the mind knew, we'll say it again, if the mind thought it knew the path right now, then the job of the transformation wouldn't be doing its job. Because the whole point of the transformation is for the mind to be taken out of the equation totally. The mind is a brilliant thing. The mind is a brilliant tool. But it's not meant to be used in the way that it has been used up until now. It serves a different function now. It's going to be the function of the mind is to create from an imagination place, but it's here to co-create with source, with the bigger part of who you are. But source only aligns with the heart. Once the heart is aligned with source, then the receptivity of the mind, what is being dropped into the mind is directly from source. But it has to pass through the mind. We'll say it again. It has to pass through the heart. Right? So, in order for you to learn, master, be in the new way of doing things, in the new frequency, you cannot bypass this transition of the mind is still trying to figure things out. The mind is still trying to fix something because it believes there's a problem. And that in itself is the problem, because there are no problems. Everything is perfect. Everything is so divinely orchestrated and unfolding so perfectly that you are creating the problems from the mind, believing that things feel weird, things feel sticky, things feel slow, things feel unclear. Yes. And also, it's meant to be that way so that you surrender to needing to have the mind in the equation. You understand?
Yes. So for me, the big shift, the big difference in reality that's occurred in the last year and a half, is that up until, for the first 40 years of my life, there's always been a roadmap of next steps on all topics. So there was, okay, what's the next step for the business and an inspiration, or the next step for a book and an inspiration, and maybe a next step for the evolution of guiding my kids for their growth. And at this time, and this is what you're alluding to, I think, as the removal of the conscious mind from the stepping out of the 3D way of the mind and into the heart, is now we find ourselves, or I find myself, in a place where there is no clarity on next steps on any topic. And it almost feels sitting in a void where there's no kind of focus point for reality.
There is a focus
outside
point.
Of the present moment.
Exactly. The focus point has to be the present moment. It is forcing you to surrender to what is present, because this becomes the focus point. This becomes the focal point of reality. But the mind has been so habituated in operating into a future point and a past point that it's a little bit hard, or the challenge or the work is for you to take those points and sort of bring it back to the present moment continuously until this becomes a more normal, habitual baseline for you. So
stepping out of a linear approach to reality?
In a big way. There's only this moment. And in this moment, you are eternal. But the mind is on this linear path where there is an end and there is this...
objectives.
Yes. So you have access to so much when you bring all these aspects of... The mind is so focused on what's next that it's not in the present.
I think the confusion of the mind is that it believes that in order to bring in what's next, it needs a what's next to focus on.
But the problem is with that, and we understand this, is that it takes you out of what you have access to now, because you are looking at the what's next from a point of view that is not even in this moment now.
So in the now, there is no what's next to focus on.
The what next in the now will reveal itself organically. Because when you are fully present in the now, you are part of the unfolding. You are in the organic flow of the unfolding. But you yourself is the one that plucks you out of the now by allowing the mind to focus at a point that's different than what you have access to.
So the mind seeking the what's next removes us from our now.
In all the ways.
So would you say the current learning for myself or for our collective members or for whoever's listening is about stepping out of the what's next approach to reality, which is what most people live and how most people operate, back
Yes.
to what we've called organic unfolding and really just focusing on being present in the now.
So there are two things. Yes, what you said is important because it's what is needed now, because the old way of doing things have been so habitually forged into your habits that it's the default. So you are now learning to make your default being in the present, being in your body, going by sensation, operating by impulse, operating by being grounded and feeling out the excitement, not, ooh, I think this is my next excitement. No, you do because you are excited to do, not because this thought came and you had to hash it out for 2 days before you take action.
So shifting from what's next to what's now.
Yes, we love that. And this is not to say that there's also a very important piece of co-creation that happens when you allow drive to kick into your now moment, drive to create something for your future. This aspect is not going away. It's that it's been so obsessed about and so cultivated that it's been the default for so long that now it's time to cultivate and to play with the energy of the present moment.
The what's now.
In all ways. In all ways and on all topics, we couldn't have a clearer message about why if you are struggling with something, it is because you are not present with what is. There is no easier way for us to declare this or to share this. If you are struggling with something, it is because you are not fully present with what is, and then allowing the flow to bring you. And in that flow, once you allow yourself to operate in more of a now reality than in a when or what's next or reality, the drive to create, the inspiration to take action is still all part of the mix, because you came here to be human and to create things with your hands, your physical reality. So, of course, you will be given guidance and given the drive and given the impulses to take action, but they can only truly come from the now. Because up to now, you and many others, most people, have been driven and operating from inspiration dropped into the mind. Creations from the mind. And this is absolutely one way to live your reality. But you are learning to master a different way. And this is why things seem a little bit slow right now, because you are given this extra pullback, this extra contraction, this extra time, it's almost like time is being stretched out for you to sort of learn this lesson and to have your hands in the clay a little bit longer with it, to master it.
Would you say we're shifting from inspiration coming from the mind to inspiration coming from the heart?
Heart equals body, yes. To come from the body, to come from the impulse, to come from the animal of you, to come from the very connected part of the earth, that you are part of nature. It's when we say heart, we mean many things. We mean the body, we mean
the grounded place,
the intelligence of who you really are. Because once you're present in the present, you are connected to your intelligence, because you have access to all your own higher source essence. So it's no longer just being out of body into the mind, trying to figure out what's next, sort of operating outside the body, trying to pull the body with you because you're so wanting to go faster, far ahead to figure out what's next. All coming from a trauma response from not feeling safe in the presence. In your presence, in your present. You understand?
Yes, we're bringing more of the higher mind into the equation.
Yeah, of course. Of course, you have been already. We're not teaching you or sharing something new with you. This has already been taking place. We're just kind of giving you different words and different ways to explain it so that the mind can begin to be easeful about it all. Really, the whole point of the conversation is to see that the mind, it's not that it's negative or it doesn't serve a purpose, because it does. It's just that where you are going to be learning how to operate in a different way. So the mind is really being plucked out of the equation because it's not the most important player. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
It's more of a secondary player.
Society has been dominantly focused on that aspect of the mind.
Absolutely.
And now it's about allowing other aspects of higher mind and inner being guidance and intuition and communication from the body to now come through in a stronger way.
And this is where you live through synchronicity. You can't live through synchronicity through your mind, right? You're meant to live synchronicity. Living through synchronicity is the natural flow. It's the natural way to be. But you have made it so special because you dip in and out. Ooh, synchronicity, ooh, back in the mind. But really, when you are operating fully out of synchronicity, this is the natural order. You know you are in full alignment when you are operating in synchronicity. But operating out of synchronicity and operating out of the present moment and in an embodied state can only happen when you know and you nurture and you know your connection to source. Because you know through that connection you are being... This is where overflow lives. The moment you bring in, how am I going to make money? How am I going to... This is the mind. It's not overflow. It's not, you're not connected to overflow. It's the mind. As soon as there's a problem or there's a situation, you're in lack. You're giving your power away to the lack, and lack comes from the mind. The mind is where the pain body lives. The mind is where the lack frequency lives, right? And it perpetuates it and creates it at a very physical level, but you don't need to. The mind is a creator of these things. The mind is where polarity is brought in, right? So if you bump yourself, if you pluck out the mind out of the equation, then what are you left with? You're left with your connection to your source. You're left with your connection to your body, grounded to the earth, in your nature, in your natural state. This is where overflow lives. This is where all your answers live, right? It's not in the mind. The mind believes that it can figure shit out. That's not the mind's job. You just forget, and you are so connected and attached to the mind being the end all overall, because the mind feels safer when it thinks it understands what's going on. But in reality, you're living in the real reality now where you don't know what the fuck is going on. That's the real reality. And this is where you actually want to be. This is where you came here to be. This is the playground that you wanted to be in. Because when there's no comfort of relating to anything that you're attached to, the playground of creation is so much bigger and so much juicier. But the caveat to this is you have to be plucking the mind out of the equation, and you have to be embodied in your present moment, knowing that this is where your power is. This is where your overflow is. There's no access to those things from the mind. Are you receiving the frequency that we are?
Very clear. Thank you.
And you're not receiving this from the mind. This frequency was very intended for you to receive within your physicality. And can you feel those shifts?
Absolutely.
Yes. Because if we would have had this conversation from the mind, maybe your mind would have been eased. But in reality, only frequency is the real shifter. Is the real power. you are stepping into a realm and a reality where you lead by frequency, but you cannot lead by frequency when you are in your mind. The mind is connected to more of the survival chakras of the body, the lower mind. You understand?
Yes.
It seeks for survival, and perhaps maybe pleasure, and perhaps maybe pleasure in the familiar. But as much as there's nothing wrong with this way of being, this is not what you're here for. Not now. Not in this part of your evolution. Not in this part of the journey. Part of the journey that you're on now is about, okay, let's change the rules of the game a little bit, because the rules of the game, not that they're always changing, but there's always an evolution to everything. And you're part of that evolution, right?
Yes.
So isn't it exciting that you get to experience your reality in a much more delicious way, but you get to choose that it gets to be delicious?
And the first step to that is...
You can't wake up in the morning saying, oh, I'm not going to be in my mind, I'm going to be in my body, and then worry about all the shit you've been worrying about. It's either or. You either choose to live in overflow and in the presence of your embodiment and your connection to source, where everything is accessible and available to you, or you keep bumping yourself back into the mind trying to create problems and fix them. Because that's what the mind is programmed to do.
Yes, and the higher mind or source doesn't ever label anything as a problem.
No, of course not. Because when you're connected to the flow, in the present moment, not needing anything to change, accepting everything as it is, you understand that there are no problems. You understand the natural order of everything, right? Nothing really is a problem. You understand that the mind may perceive that there is a problem, and the mind may want to fix it as a problem. But really, when you really land into the presence, you understand that the organic unfolding is perfect, right?
It always is.
Yes. So, we know this was a long-winded intro or share, but what we'd like to hear from you is, how does all of this apply to all areas of your life that you've been worried about?
I think it's simply a matter of going back to focus on grounding, on presence, and not seeing any circumstance we label as contrast as being wrong or a problem or needing to be solved.
Right. Yes. Can you already start basking in the perfection of all of it?
Absolutely.
Can you feel the overflow?
Absolutely.
Can you feel yourself being part of that overflow?
Absolutely.
So then go back and remember when you pinch yourself off, literally, because you are deciding to live in the mind, you can't access that overflow because everything is lacking. You are lacking clarity to move forward. You are lacking money to make the right choices. You are lacking clarity to have conversations with your daughter. All those things rearrange themselves when you are in overflow. Right?
Yes.
So we want you to title this conversation Overflow. And in a week's time from now, when you forget, simply re-listen, to remember, to bring back your remembrance on board. You just forget. It's not that it doesn't affect us to have these same conversations over and over again, because we have had this conversation in a different way, on a different time, in a different place. But what we wish for you is to remind yourself that we present you with the choices. You have options. Your power lies in your choice point every morning. Am I going to live in my 3D mind of lack, or am I going to choose my powerful flow of overflow? Right? You have those options, and they are available to you 24/7. Anything else?
I think everything was crystal clear. I think the frequency that was transmitted in the conversation around tapping into more of being present in the now and groundedness is maybe solidified more.
Yes, of course. We sense that big time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for receiving.